Get busy living or get busy dying. 3 decades have passed. That single line has outlasted every trophy the movie ever received. People repeat it on sidewalks, in office break rooms, during the still moments when existence seems to have stalled. Most of them wouldn't recognize the director's name. Some couldn't even recall the movie's complete title. Yet every one of them holds on to the voice that spoke it. That voice was Morgan Freeman's, and the man standing opposite him in that prison courtyard, the man he had to convince audiences he'd known for 2 decades, all within a single afternoon of filming, was Tim Robbins. What these two actors created together during the summer of 1993, within the walls of an actual Ohio correctional facility, went on to become cinema's highest-rated film ever made. Not right away, not anywhere close. It required years, silent years, television reruns, recommendations shared between everyday people who had no particular stake in Hollywood, before audiences finally recognized what had been accomplished. Now at 88, Morgan Freeman has started opening up about what those filming months truly demanded from him. What it meant to spend 50 years waiting for a part that would draw on everything his life experience had built. To grasp what Shawshank truly represented for Morgan Freeman, you need to first understand what those 5 decades before it were actually like. This story doesn't open with victory. It starts in a Mississippi classroom, when he was 9, when a kid nobody had high hopes for stepped onto an improvised stage during a school production and experienced, for the very first time, a sense of significance. The clapping was modest. Only parents and teachers made up the crowd. But Morgan Freeman later admitted that this was the moment he became devoted to acting, not for the attention it brought, but because it was the first time in his childhood that he felt genuinely noticed. That sensation would sustain him through the following 50 years of repeated rejection, hardship, and the specific torment of possessing talent in an industry that hadn't yet found reason to care. He departed Mississippi. He spent time in the Air Force, which mainly showed him the kind of person he didn't want to become. In 1959, he relocated to Los Angeles, carrying nothing more than a duffel bag, discovered that Hollywood wasn't interested in the type of performer he believed himself to be, and moved on to New York instead. He worked as a taxi driver. He performed in the dance chorus at the 1964 World's Fair. He continued showing up to auditions and continued being rejected, not always outright. Sometimes rejection came as silence following his reading, a courteous thank you, or simply the fact that the callback never arrived. By 40, he landed a spot on The Electric Company, an educational children's program on PBS, portraying Easy Reader, a character meant to make reading appealing to young kids. Across 5 seasons, he turned up, delivered his performances, earned his salary, and stayed unnoticed by the film industry. At 40 years old, he was adored by children who had no clue their beloved television character was actually a classically trained Shakespearean performer who'd spent 20 years trying to earn serious recognition. At age 50, in 1987, he earned his first Academy Award nomination for a modest film titled Street Smart, playing a brutal pimp alongside Christopher Reeve. The nomination surprised many, not because his acting wasn't deserving, but because 50 years is an exceptionally long stretch to wait before anyone takes notice. He lost. Sean Connery took home the award instead. Still, the offers started coming in differently after that point. Then 1989 arrived. Driving Miss Daisy, Glory, 2 movies, 2 nominations in consecutive years, and audiences finally realized this man had been present all along, patiently waiting and prepared, bringing more skill into a single scene than many performers achieve across their entire careers. Yet the Oscar remained out of reach. Nomination after nomination arrived, paired with loss after loss, and each time Morgan Freeman departed with the composed dignity of someone who understood the world, operates according to its own timeline, and resisting that reality accomplishes nothing. He'd spent 50 years internalizing that truth. A handful of additional award seasons meant little in comparison. Then the script arrived. He's since discussed that moment with a careful honesty that convinces you of its truth. He got the script for The Shawshank Redemption, read it cover to cover, and considered it, in his own words, among the finest he'd ever encountered. Barely anything shifted between that initial draft and the finished film. In an industry where revisions arrive marked in different colored pages and every production feels like unfinished construction, this script arrived remarkably solid and self-contained, showcasing its quality from the opening page onward. After reading it, he knew he wanted in, regardless of which role he'd be offered, whatever part he could land. The role being offered was the lead. Not Andy Dufresne, the falsely imprisoned banker Tim Robbins would portray at the story's core, but rather Red Ellis Boyd Redding, a man who'd spent so long incarcerated that he'd effectively become the prison's living memory, its moral compass, its steady pulse, the narrator, the guiding voice throughout the entire film. Learning this was the part they wanted him for, Morgan Freeman later shared a comment carrying the full weight of his 50-year journey. He recalled thinking, I'm the one steering this film." He was stunned, and rightfully so. There was a single complication. He obtained the original Stephen King novella that inspired the movie, sent to him by someone, opened it, and read just the first page. In King's original story, Red was portrayed as a middle-aged man of Irish descent with graying red hair. Morgan Freeman shut the book immediately. He read no further. He wasn't interested in embodying a character described that way, trusting his own judgment instead. What he'd already absorbed from Frank Darabont's screenplay was sufficient. The essence of the character, someone carrying hard-earned wisdom alongside preserved hope, someone who'd endured by turning inward while somehow keeping hope alive, that was a man Morgan Freeman felt equipped to portray. In many respects, it was a role his entire life had been quietly preparing him for. Prior to Freeman securing the part, Red had reportedly been under consideration for several other actors, including Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Paul Newman, and Robert Redford. What Darabont eventually recognized in Morgan Freeman was a quality none of those other names could provide, a natural authority requiring no justification, no backstory necessary. Audiences trusted him instantly upon his appearance. His voice earned belief the moment he began speaking. Darabont would later state he couldn't picture anyone else in the role. Castle Rock's producer Liz Glotzer was reportedly the person who proposed disregarding the novella's physical description altogether and simply hiring Freeman for the part. Looking back, it proved to be exactly the right decision. Filming commenced during the summer of 1993 in Mansfield, Ohio, at the Ohio State Reformatory, an authentic, abandoned prison featuring Gothic architecture and imposing stone walls that required no additional set design to convincingly embody the story's setting. Though the narrative was set in Maine, Ohio provided the physical foundation. Throughout that summer in Mansfield, Morgan Freeman stayed, according to his own recollection, in a house he rented from a dentist who practiced Seventh-day Adventism, an arrangement that resulted in at least one backyard cookout and eventually a tornado. He later shared this memory with the dry amusement of someone who has witnessed enough of life to find humor in a tornado interrupting a barbecue rather than feeling shaken by it. By his description, filming itself proceeded without major friction. There were disagreements over creative direction, discussions between himself, Tim Robbins, and Darabont regarding how to approach particular moments, what a scene truly required, and when to intensify or dial back a performance. But these were never genuine conflicts, nothing that would poison the atmosphere on set. What existed instead was genuine collaboration, a cast that recognized the value of what they held in the script and wanted to do it justice. Morgan Freeman has characterized that Ohio summer as enjoyable, even delightful, by his account. Considering everything that preceded it and everything that followed, that summer of 1993 in Mansfield carried the feeling of a temporary reprieve, a stretch of time when both the work and the company were excellent, and the material brought out everyone's best effort. One particular story from that summer, documented within the film's production history, reveals something about Morgan Freeman's character as a professional. Early in the movie, there's a scene depicting Andy and Red's first genuine conversation in the prison yard. The moment where Red tosses a baseball casually while talking, establishing their bond with such natural ease that viewers never doubt its authenticity. Filming that single scene consumed 9 hours. Frank Darabont insisted on numerous takes, remaining precise and exacting, refusing to move forward until the scene felt correct. Morgan Freeman threw that baseball continuously for 9 hours without a single objection. The following morning, he showed up on set with his left arm in a sling. He made no fuss about it. He simply arrived ready to work. That level of dedication isn't something that develops overnight. It emerges from 50 years of grasping that the work itself matters most, that serving the scene is the priority, and that nobody on set owes you patience or guaranteed quality. You deliver your best because that's simply expected of you. Morgan Freeman endured 9 hours of throwing a baseball because Frank Darabont needed that scene to work properly. Nothing more needed to be said. Tim Robbins, meanwhile, approached the project with his own genuine respect for what they were building. He recalled reading the script and experiencing the same reaction Morgan had, recognizing it as among the finest material he'd ever come across, consistently strong from beginning to end, the rare kind of work that leaves you transformed after finishing it. He'd grown up watching Morgan Freeman perform on The Electric Company, a detail that adds its own poetic layer. The man once famous among preschoolers eventually becoming a colleague, that same grown-up child felt privileged to work alongside. Their on-screen chemistry remains one of the most examined elements in contemporary American film, that bond between Andy and Red, developing naturally across years' worth of shared moments in the prison yard. What made it succeed wasn't dramatic performance, it was authentic presence. Two men, simply talking in a yard, both entirely engaged in the moment. The film premiered on September 23, 1994. Its box office impact was negligible. The title itself tripped people up. Nobody could pronounce Shawshank correctly. That season, it faced competition from Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction, along with numerous other releases commanding attention through louder, flashier means. Morgan Freeman later recalled that audiences would mispronounce the title in surprisingly inventive ways. Shawshank Reduction, Scumshot. His favorite, he noted with complete seriousness, was Shank Reduction. Had that become the official title, he joked, it might have been a smash hit. Regardless, the original title remained, and box office numbers reflected the confusion surrounding it. The theatrical run earned $16 million against a $25 million budget. The industry labeled it a respectable failure, a quality film that simply failed to draw viewers. Then something occurred that defies typical explanation within film industry logic. Cable television picked it up. Ted Turner, who owned Castle Rock at that time, started broadcasting Shawshank across his networks with an enthusiasm Darabont later described as belonging to someone who didn't feel he was losing anything by doing so. He aired it repeatedly, seemingly every few nights, and gradually, then rapidly, then in a way that became impossible to trace precisely, viewership began climbing. People kept tuning in, and they began recommending it to others, quietly, in precisely the manner Morgan Freeman once noted was the only genuine way anything ever truly succeeds, through word of mouth. A working-class man on a New York sidewalk stopped Tim Robbins to explain what the film had meant to him personally. Not a critic, not an industry insider, simply someone who'd watched it on an ordinary Tuesday evening and felt profoundly affected. Morgan Freeman later reflected that once strangers began approaching him on the street, men with regular jobs and calloused hands, with no particular connection to Hollywood, stopping to share what the movie had meant to them. That was the moment he realized they'd created something exceptional, something transcending typical filmmaking, reaching towards something more fundamental.